Hi, Natalie. Hi, Natalie and Seamus, Robin. Good morning. Welcome.
Some new names coming up on the chat there, which is great. Where are you guys dialing in from? Give us a text on the chat. Paris, there you are.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Well, you're Richard, home from home, eh?
Tout à fait.
There you go. Bonjour, alors. Superb. Hi, John. Hi, Joe. Good morning. Welcome, Sarah. In for a treat this morning. Richard, stalwart of the outdoor industry, but so much more than that. And he'll get a bit of what makes Richard tick this morning. Just wait another minute or so for anybody else to join. And then we'll get ourselves started. And of course, feel free to ask questions. We'll try and bring them in from as early as you like. Just pop them in the chat or Q&A, and we'll try and bring those through as soon as we can. Richie and I we try to honor every question, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Indeed. Why don't we kick off, Mark, for this morning?
Yep, let's get going. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Friday show. Apologies for last week, which was a miss with Cheryl Calverley, but Cheryl will be coming back on very soon. But I'm delighted this morning we've got Richard Bond. I've known Richard for a number of years. Richard is Managing Director of Clear Channel, which is a Goliath of the media industry. Probably best known for outdoor, but has a few more things. He's been Managing Director for 2.5 years, but Richard's actually been at Clear Channel for, I think, 22 years in total. But I would say he's anything but one-dimensional. In fact, I know Richard and a few other guys as well. Clear Channel have been sponsors of the Sprintathon. And I think underneath it all, Clear Channel are very clear about how they want to give back to a broader group than just financial stakeholders. And Richard himself, you'll come to see very quickly, is a very good-hearted person. And giving back is really at the heart of what I think makes him tick. I remember I did a talk on neurodiversity a couple of years ago, and that was Clear Channel, well ahead of the curve in terms of thinking about that as something important. And the platform that Richard's driving is to be a platform. The message that Richard's driving is to be a platform for good. So very taking community and environmental issues very seriously. So I asked Mark Boyan, who Richard and I both know quite well, just say, what do you think about Richard? Just to flatter him a little bit. And Mark, who's pretty big hitter himself, said Richard is one of the best in the industry, has a bias for action and openness to transformation and change, an incredibly trusted and dependable person. I think Richard's got a fascinating story to tell, and I'm really glad that we can dig into that a bit today. So very welcome, Richard. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited, but also very nervous.
Absolutely no need to be nervous there, Richard. I mean, certainly after what you've probably been through over the last 18 months in the outdoor space, this is going to be a doddle, to be honest. But hey, look, in all honesty, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on this morning. I've been really looking forward to the show for a long time now, clearly because, quite honestly, we talk to lots of marketers, but actually there's no more specialist and expert than someone who literally has lived and breathed the cold face of this pandemic. The outdoor space has been hit pretty badly, I would say, or certainly what looks like in the headlines. Love to get your take on it, but before we do, I want to get a sense of how you're feeling. How's it on the ground for you at the moment?
It's really been, probably the steepest learning curves the last two and a bit years. As Mark said, I've been in outdoor and a Clear Channel for 22 years. I kind of chose this industry because I kind of love the idea that out of home is about infrastructure and media. And I always found that quite an intriguing business concept. There's not, other media businesses about content in media. I think the fact that out of home is about infrastructure in media was always something that appealed to me. I actually kind of fell in love with the medium via one of our competitors, DOOH, as I'm a Frenchman. But I've definitely got to say the last kind of 2 and a bit years have been another journey. I think and a good opportunity to put to the test the idea that good leaders should be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I think that's definitely been one of the big takeaways from the last 2 years. I'd always heard about this expression, but I don't think I've applied it anymore in the last 2 years. And I think while you are changing, while the business is changing, I think while still remaining true to your personal values was always one of the big things. And I often reflect upon that, this idea of how do you make sure you do this idea of learning, unlearning, relearning, while remaining true to yourself. And I think probably one of the things I'm the proudest about on a personal level, but also on a professional level.
So Richard, I mean, as you say, I mean, rich learning, and out of adversity comes some of the greatest learnings. What do you think you've learned about yourself and what motivates you through these difficult times?
Yeah, I think the thing that probably my biggest personal reflection was this idea of kind of how work and home are the two biggest components of my life. I've never been a fan of this concept that how's your work-life balance going? You know, work is an intrinsic part of my life. So it's funny when work and home kind of come together, happen at the same time, in the same place. And I think it reminded me that actually this idea of work plus home equals life was so crucial. But I think when working from home started feeling like living from the office, I think I realized it was a slightly different trajectory. I think from a work perspective, it became more important than ever. This, while also from a home perspective, probably going at kind of at another level and focusing on the small things, simple things that brought us that brought us pleasure. And I think when work and home overlap so much, it was interesting how reminding myself of the big picture from a work perspective was absolutely essential to be able to try to kind of guide us and lead us through these difficult times. While from a more personal perspective, when your world actually narrows and becomes smaller and becomes much more centered on your home, this ability of enjoying the simple pleasures in life, the small things in life, was absolutely crucial. And Mark said, I've been MD of the business 2.5 years. It's something I've always wanted to be from the moment I joined this business. I was like, wow, wouldn't it be brilliant to not only enjoy this business, but be able to be the guy who manages and directs it with an awesome group of people at Clear Channel. But 2019 was pretty much our best year ever. And you think, wow, isn't it brilliant? And then you kind of start 2020, and you're not far off your worst year ever. It was a powerful reminder that you're never as good as they say you are, but you're also never as bad as they say you are. So I thought a powerful reminder of don't believe the hype, but don't believe the haters either.
Oh wow, I love that. I love that quote there, Richard, and it's absolutely so true. And it absolutely, the turbulence that we experienced 2019 through to 2020 is kind of unparalleled, and more so in your space than most. I mean, everyone's been impacted, but actually when you talk about best to worst, it's as good and bad as it gets. How did you personally manage that? I mean, what did you have coping mechanisms? Did you manage the stress okay? What was sort of some of the ways that you were able to get through?
I think on a professional perspective, it was this idea of, we described in our business as kind of long-term agilism. It was reminding ourselves of around our mission and our purpose, which was kind of that guiding northern lights, that northern star, while also then kind of reminding ourselves that we would have to adapt and adjust our approach and our tactics in the short term. And I think very, very quickly, as our board, we came together and we remained true to our mission, which was this idea of kind of creating the future of media. We remind ourselves that we wanted to remain true to our purpose, which is the idea of being a platform for brand and a platform for good. But very quickly, we also had a few kind of overarching pandemic principles, which is kind of protect our people, protect the business, and kind of remaining socially responsible. And I think through that, it was this socially responsible was this idea that we're an out-of-home business, yet the core message from the government was to stay at home. And therefore, you've got to be conscious that, you've got to remain true to what the government's message is, while also trying to protect the business. So sometimes these emotions, these feelings were hard to work together. Where I do feel fortunate is I absolutely do love the out-of-home industry. I think it's I chose the outdoor industry. I didn't fall into it. Sometimes people talk about falling into a career, a job. I actually proactively chose to join this industry. Then I was really fortunate to join a business that I pretty much kind of fell in love with, and it's a completely different business. I mean, I would say that it's had 4 or 5 guys in the 22 years I've been there, but one thing has remained consistent is actually the people we work with, the people I work with have always been brilliant, might that be landlords, advertisers, agency specialist partners, but also, as importantly, kind of the team of Clear Channel. And I think through that gives you this ability to, there's no politics. We look after, we look after each other. So therefore, professionally, that makes a big, big difference. And then on a personal level, I was one of the lucky ones. We haven't got a big house, but we've got a nice house. I've got 3 children, 12, 10, and 5. And I tried to make sure that, from a home perspective, I tried to make it as special for them as possible, and through trying to make sure that it didn't impact them, it was good for me. So suddenly made much more of an effort of speaking French at home, which is one of my regrets with my 2 eldest. I probably did make too much of an effort. So seeing my little 5-year-old pretty much being fluent in French has definitely been one of the highlights of the pandemic. Got back into cooking loads of food and all the rest. I think, again, this idea of acknowledging that my life is made of work plus home. So trying to make sure that both of these were as fulfilling as they could be. And I think you then try to do the best job you possibly can, and trust that others will judge you upon that, basically the energy, the effort, and the intelligence you put into your work.
So Richard, you said something really interesting, which is I always knew I wanted to be MD. So I think we'll come back to that because that's an interesting intent. But you also said it was very deliberate how you chose outdoor and got into it. So for many people watching this, they're at that stage of figuring out, how do I get started? How do I get on? How do I get up? So why did you choose outdoor, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so I think, as you say, it kind of goes back to me being French first and foremost. I grew up just south of Lyon, which is actually also where DOOH invented the idea of the bus stop, in the ad bus stop. And I think this beautiful concept, which is outdoor advertising, is infrastructure first and foremost, which is funded by media. And there is no infrastructure without the media, but there's also no media without the infrastructure. And I thought that was such an interesting kind of concept. And I was like, wow, it's brilliant when purpose is actually within the core of the product. Before we even talked about purpose, that's what I liked. And then I realized, well, that is the purpose in itself. It was, before purpose was trending in a way, within the DNA of an outdoor business are these 2 facets. I look at Clear Channel UK, so we're 600 employees across 15 depots. And I think people are always surprised when I share some of these numbers of like 600 employees, 400 vans, 15 depots and offices. And that's because this idea of 400 of the people are actually people out there building street furniture, street infrastructure, maintaining that. And then we've got 200 people on the media side. So it's not like if we've baked it in, it's not something we've added on top. It's actually at the core of the business model. And I always found that pretty intriguing. And I probably should say I did do 18 months in a little bit more in the finance realm and foreign currency exchange. And I thought, I can't do this for 25 plus years. So I've got to do something else. And I thought, quite enjoyed doing this study on DOOH when I was doing my master's. So why don't I look at what type of jobs are available within that space? And I think at that point, I knew I didn't want to be in New York. I knew I wanted to leave France, and then kind of London became that choice. And it was meant to be for 2 years maximum. And here we are, 22 years on.
So Richard, this is a bit of a dual question. Picking up on what's so special about London that makes it home now for you? But then a complete curveball in the sense that I'd love to get some lessons in leadership from someone who really runs the largest UK outdoor organization. So what have you learned as being a leader in the top position as well? So London and then leadership.
Yeah, I think London, what I liked about it is when I was in France, I felt quite American. My mom's American. When I'm in America, I felt very, very French. And I felt London was probably somewhere in between. And I remember landing in Heathrow with kind of 2 suitcases and making my way to East London to a place called Plaistow. And just everything about London just felt brilliant. And then kind of went for my first, I arrived on the 7th of February 2000, started at Clear Channel on the 8th of February 2000. And then I kind of opened that door on front door on Golden Square, having walked through Golden Square in Soho, and just thinking, I'm the luckiest, you're 21-year-old, and I'm like, I'm so lucky, isn't this just awesome? And I think from that point onwards, I just try to kind of lean towards the things that make me happy, that I feel pretty good at. I always find that the things I'm good at make me happy, and when you're good at something, it makes you happy. And I find that and sometimes you find it by trying and testing and learning. But I find that it's as a mantra for life, it works quite well. Do more of things that make me happy. Work on the things I need to get better at, and try to perfect certain facets, skill sets, and the rest.
Amazing.
Yeah, that linkage between being good and happy is often true, but so often not really respected and picked up on. Enjoy it along the way is a good lesson. But I mean, you've climbed up through the organisation. It won't have been a straight line path. What have been some of the pivot moments to get from A to B?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting one, because I think people assume that because I've been at 22 years at Clear Channel, that it's been a love story all the way through, that I always knew my way, things just came my way. And actually I realized that first and foremost, we've probably been 4 different business in that period of time. And I think I always kind of was aware, and I had someone very early on saying to me, Richard, you've got to unsee a career as kind of snake in ladders. And that always helped me a little bit, because I felt like when I got to a point where I was getting frustrated or things didn't happen, I always realized it was my choice to keep on looking for the opportunities within Clear Channel, or at times have a conversation elsewhere and decide, okay, do I want to go and do something else? And I think it was even the moments when I chose not to go somewhere else, it was a conscious decision to stay. And I think as long as you're making conscious decisions through your career, that's probably the most important. So I wouldn't describe it now when people ask me, and it's funny because I've been fortunate enough to have people who've, I wouldn't necessarily say mentor me, because but people who have been kind to me, have shared their views, their thoughts, I wouldn't describe it as snake and ladders now. I like to talk about it as a little bit of a labyrinth, and this idea that you need vision around what you hope for, but you also need resilience. And I think it's an equal measure, a vision of what you hope to achieve, a difference you hope to make, and then this idea of resilience, because at times you need a little bit, at times you need a little bit of both, or more of one and less of the other. And I think that's probably, again, a learning of the last 24 months. Had I not learned that the 20 years before that, I think I would have found the last 2 years extremely stressful, because you do feel a responsibility towards the business, but I'd say even more so towards the people, because I think I recognize myself in so many of the people in our business. And I'm fortunate enough to say that although I've been in the business 22 years, there's a lot of people in our business who've been 30, 40 years. I mean, this year alone, we've signed off 4 people's letters for their 40 years at Clear Channel, which was quite mind-boggling and very humbling also.
Richard, it's really interesting, particularly rightly or wrongly, but sort of young people have this reputation of being slightly impatient with their careers, and in all honesty, tending to kind of veer off in other directions and change jobs pretty frequently, and certainly not having anything like the tenure, or thinking that it has a tenure in one company the way that you have. What advice would you give to somebody like that, particularly at a moment where they may be slightly frustrated in their current role, and then sort of either looking to stay internal, go somewhere else? What would be sort of your key tips on that?
Yeah, I think probably the first thing to say is, when you've been in a place 22 years, I try not to provide too much experience in that space, because I can only share my lived experience. I think it's about asking yourself the right questions around, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling right here, right now? What are the enablers in my careers? What are the blockers in my careers? What are the things that are making me happy? What are the things that are making me unhappy? Basically, unhappy. I would say probably for me, it's the people I work with. It's probably the most important. I mean, the product and the people are the two things that make me decide what I want to do next. And even right here, right now, I know one of the things I love is the people I work with and my boss. You know, they make such a difference. My boss was in a completely different business. I might even, you know, and he said to me, Bonnie, I want you to come and join us. There's probably chances, you wouldn't even have to tell me too much about what that business was. I probably would really think about it.
Yeah.
Bonnie is a great nickname, by the way. Love it. So snakes and ladders, great. Yeah, lovely metaphor. Can you think of a snake or one of the times you slipped back a bit from where you wanted to be, you know, and what you learned from that along the way? Because it's, you know, the setbacks happen to everybody. So is there any particular snake you'd highlight?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think sometimes the snakes are something that's happening to the business, and sometimes the snake is the way you behave, the way you've done something. When it's about the business, it's sometimes easier because it's not about you. But I actually find the most difficult snakes, it's when it's about you. It's the way you're behaving, it's the way you're acting, it's the way. And I think for me, probably one of the biggest personal snake was this idea of I do like control, and and letting go of that control. Moving away from being an expert at what I do, actually being more of a generalist in the kind of coaching and leadership space. And when you've been in the business 22 years, when you know all the systems, you've helped write some of the systems, some of the processes. I think the idea of letting go is a difficult one. At times, I often think maybe I would have become a better leader earlier had I gone to a business in which I didn't know all the systems, all of the processes. So I would probably say snakes are moments when I need to change. I kind of know I have to, but it's really hard. It's really difficult. And again, I feel like, then some of the enablers were moments where I was chosen to, about 6 years ago or so, to go on in INSEAD Leadership and Change course for like 2 weeks in Fontainebleau. And it was interesting because everything they said I knew already. There were things I'd studied and things I'd read. But for one reason or the other, at that moment, during that 2 weeks in the woods of Fontainebleau, something clicked. And I was adamant that, I wrote a letter to myself of how I would be a month on from here, how I would be in 3 months from here, how I would be in 6 months from there. And interestingly enough, month 1, I was just about on track. Month 3, I was just about on track. Month 6, I was ahead of what I'd written down. And I think that's suddenly the ladder where someone was willing to invest in me, believe that I had more in me. And I think these moments you don't look back. But I think it has to be that moment. I think had I gone to Fontainebleau maybe a year prior to that, it probably wouldn't have just connected. It would have still been as valuable as this and the other. But would I have taken that moment and seized that enabler?
Richard, it's actually quite remarkable how almost thoughtful and in some ways planned you have been in terms of understanding your own self and what you want to get out of your career, and then being able to actually map it out in many respects. Perhaps, recognizing that the world is agile and adaptive and you need to kind of roll with punches, but still you had a bit of a plan and a map that kind of moves you forward. I'd love to just get your sense and take as to the extent to which you feel that learning, you talked about the need to learn, unlearn, relearn, unlearn, learn, and relearn. And I'd love just to get your take on the sense of how you found what role learning plays in your career.
Yeah, I realize it's all depends, and it's fine. It's a little bit like inspirations and all of this. I think content, you've got to be in a space where you want to be a sponge. And I think what I know about myself is there's moments when I'm heads up and there's moments when I'm heads down, and I'm very conscious of how I'm thinking and feeling. And when I know when I'm in a heads up moment, at that point I will go and seek, inspiration. I will go and seek learning, and that learning comes from so many facets. I kind of, sometimes it'll be a course, sometimes it'll be a coach or a mentor. Or actually, sometimes I find I learn so much from, I shouldn't probably call them the youth team, but the youngsters in our business, where they share something about their lives. They share something about something they've learned, about something they've picked up on, something they want to change. And I think trying to remain curious to learning can come from so many different different places. And I think I always try to go back to this idea of self-awareness and self-belief, and trying to make sure that I always start with self-awareness. And when I feel like I've filled that tank, then I feel like I'm allowed to add a little bit into the self-belief tank. But I kind of always try to start with making sure is my self-awareness tank full, and then top up the self-belief one.
Yeah, lovely to hear that in terms of the importance of self-awareness. We're all on that journey, never perfect. I'm just going to go a bit left field for a moment. I know you're really passionate about cycling. And I just wonder if that's just because you love cycling, or is actually a vehicle to reflect and think about things? Do you think about nothing? Do you think about everything? What role does cycling play for you?
Wow, it's funny. Actually, yesterday was a Media Week Awards, and someone, basically Sally, one of my kind of Clear Channel friends, asked me, "Do you think they're going to ask you questions about cycling?" I'm like, I doubt it. But cycling is an intrinsic part of my life. I absolutely love it, and what I love about it is this idea that again, I can either think about everything or think about nothing. I feel like it's where I come up with my best ideas, actually, because I can let it breathe. I'm not there trying to answer right here, right now. I'm not there trying on my phone. I find skiing is not dissimilar. Moments when you've got to let go. You've got to, your head, your lungs, your legs are at full exercise, and therefore you let go, you unhook a little bit, and from it, some of the best ideas. Or at times, actually, if nothing's in my head, actually it's empty, but it's actually quite a beautiful empty, and I come back resourced and ready to try to be a better father, better husband, and better managing director.
There's definitely a glint in your eye when you start to talk about cycling. You really came alive there. Thank you, Richard. Richie, back to you.
No, it's actually fascinating. And I actually love the observation that when there was nothing in your head, there was actually some of the most beautiful moments. And I guess that's in many ways the whole premise behind meditation, is to try and clear that head. And then suddenly, you get back into reality, and all of a sudden it feels like you've had such a refreshed perspective on things. So actually, that's a really, really cool nugget there that you just shared.
Funny, I don't meditate, but I am Catholic, and I do go to church, and I do actually often think, actually this is almost like, it does feel like meditation, so I completely agree. And I hope one day I have enough time to do it all.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that'll come. Richard, one of the things that Mark opened with was certainly your sense, not just of purpose for your own organization, but also the fact that you recognize that you have a platform to help champion some of the best and the greatest causes out there. And I'd love to get your take on why you feel that's important. And then maybe a bit about, how you're able to actually help elevate others using your platform.
Yeah, I think it goes back to this idea that I want to work in a place where my values can align with the values of the business, where we talk about this idea of kind of bring you, shape us, as kind of our employee value prop. If I was to use that term, and I think we're very conscious that outdoor advertising is one of the biggest broadcast channels, one of the most public, physical, and visible. You can skip it, you can ad block it. It's a very inclusive channel. And I think with that, it's out-of-home superpower is this idea of being a platform for brand. But as a result, there's also this platform for good, in the sense that 50p in every pound spent goes back to local authorities, local communities, local transport authorities. But there's also this, we became quite clear that we wanted to use that platform to kind of promote to promote things that we believe in, and it's quite an inclusive process in the sense that we have in Mark. You talked about this fairness conference you attended, where you shared your beautiful message on neurodiversity and its superpowers, and that kind of made us reflect on this idea of superpowers and this idea of what is our superpower, what is out of home superpower, and it was this idea. It's we do broadcast, we do fame in a trusted environment. With that, with great powers come great responsibilities, and we felt that if we can make a difference, we should do exactly that. And I think we've always, might that be with Cephas William and 56 Black Men, might that be with Victoria Brooks and the guys at Bloom, might that be with Brixton Finishing School. I think we're always very aware of, if we can make a difference, we should absolutely try to do exactly that. And I think what we've now started working on is actually enabling the team to share who are the charities they want to support. And that's kind of support with time, support with money, but also support with our biggest, our biggest asset, which is the out of home space. And when you get people tell you that story back of the difference we were able to make, and we were fortunate 2 weeks ago to have a big event where we all came back together on OC Island, and we had the CMO from the Teenage Cancer Trust explain to us that a little bit the battle they are having, how different Teenage Cancer Trust is to cancer in general, and how the challenges are different, but also the difference we have been able to make. And I could see how the difference we made and how the team responded to it. It's a powerful reminder of, if we're doing well, I think we have a duty to do good and to try to kind of move the agenda, change the narrative, and move things in a positive direction. I think that's it's something I was always told from a very, very young age, and I always reflect on this idea of what would my parents say if they saw me, what would my wife say, what would my kids say, what would my best friend say, would they recognize me? And even as we speak today, through everything I say, I always have this reflection of, would the people who know me best recognize me? Would they know me if they sat at the back of the room? And I think that's something that always stays with me.
Yeah, that's lovely, Richard. I mean, that's the linkage between doing well and doing good, but also how are you showing up, and is it the person that people would expect of you? I also never really thought about the role that out of home plays on infrastructure. I mean, it's sort of obvious now you've said it, but Robin had a question: how much of the revenue generated goes towards infrastructure public services? You said 50%. I couldn't have imagined that, but Robin's also got another question. I don't know if you know Robin offline, but what's the next job you want? I don't know how much you can answer that, but maybe this tilt towards what's to come, what's still left in your career ahead.
I think what I'm happy with, and we talked about this earlier at the moment, I have got a Northern Star, something that I know I would want to be able to achieve. Having said that, I've also kind of learned this idea of having to enjoy the moment, live in the moment. And I think what I am excited about is I'm as happy now as I was on that first day when I walked through the doors of 33 Golden Square, 33 Golden Square. So I think this idea that I'm still passionate about the industry I'm in, I'm as optimistic about our industry now as I was back then. I look at it and I kind of, our global president always talks about this idea that out of home is the oldest medium, but it might also be the one with the brightest future. And I completely believe that, because I think when you think about reach, when you think about fame, when you think about trust, this is out of home's kind of superpowers. And we're really lucky that actually digital and mobile enhance out of home, actually make out of home work harder. And one of the things I always say to the team is, let's take the best of digital and mobile and leave the worst. And imagine if we could achieve that, how powerful our channel could be. Imagine how much good we could be. And therefore this idea of the 50p in the pound going back into local authorities, transport authorities and communities will keep on. So I think, I would love, I would love to stay in this industry. I would love to kind of keep on growing my role, my influence in that, in that space. And if anything, the last 18 months have made me try to, while things are good and audiences have bounced back, like ahead of prior to the pandemic, revenue is in a really, really solid place. I'm trying to enjoy the moment, because we all know that there will be more battles, there will be more moments for resilience required ahead. So at the moment, I'm also trying to make sure that I'm not forgetting to live by my own principle and try to enjoy it. And I'm not going to lie, this week has been marked by these 45 minutes with you guys this morning, having seen the likes of Claudine, Kathleen on the chat before. I was like, okay, wow, how do I make sure that I, imposter syndrome was in full flow as the week was building up. So still getting myself out of my comfort zone, but getting myself out of my comfort zone in slightly different ways. And I had someone again last night say to me, well, it's a good, you should feel outside of your comfort zone. You're always asking us to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, so it's good to hear you're doing it yourself. So, thank you guys for, getting me on the show and getting me out of my comfort zone.
Well, Richard, you certainly have nothing to fear at all. And most of them, I'm glad that we helped in that journey, in that personal journey of getting through. I've got to admit, by the way, that you gave me a warm and fuzzy moment when every time you mentioned Golden Square, and certainly when you reflected on your journey as to when you landed up there as a youngster, and that sort of sense that it gave you. It's funny because when I was at the early stages of my career, I used to live on Charlotte Street and then actually walk all the way through to Piccadilly for a role I was doing, and I would pass Golden Square every morning, and honestly, it gave me that same sense of excitement the way that you've just said. So it clearly is an infectious place on so many levels. And you've just, as you were talking, it really just brought back that really nice memory that I had of the breeze in my face, probably seeing a few people who didn't make it home the night before, jumping around the square, but everything else just being just a really nice moment there. So thank you for that.
You'll have to come and join us. You'll have to come. You'll have to come and visit us at 33 Golden Square. We've got a nice, amazing space called the Playground, in which we kind of try to invite advertisers, agencies, creative agencies to come and have a play, have a feel, and kind of experience things in real life out of home, which is kind of what we're all about.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that offer for sure, Richard. I just want to sort of ask around the inspiration points for you, and particularly, I mean, you're a mentor with us. You mentioned some other organizations that you're helping from a mentoring perspective. So what role do you think mentorship plays in ultimate career success, both for the mentee, but perhaps even in a reverse mentoring angle?
Yeah, completely. I find the word mentor or mentoring quite daunting, because again, it comes with this idea of, wow, what are the expectations? How do you try to match up against it? So I try to think about it more as a kind of coffee catch up. I think a chance for people to talk, to be open, to be honest, to feel that there are no barriers. And I realize you never really mentor someone. What you're having is a meaningful conversation, which, if it goes well, creates beautiful serendipitous moments. I always think back, I was lucky to be chosen to be part of the Bloom, the exchange 2 years ago, and I was paired with Kim French from Preen, and I look at what started as kind of 6 session has now developed into a friendship and conversation that have led us to kind of run campaigns with like kind of We Are Girls on periods and things of that sort, and kind of using our medium as a kind of platform to kind of shock that taboo, to kind of make it less taboo, to make it a conversation point. And I realized the best conversations are the ones when you don't see yourself as a mentor, but in a conversation where you say, let's have a conversation, let's see the role it plays, the influence it has. And I try to, the idea of reverse mentoring, I always try to think back at the young version of myself. And, what I enjoyed was when people, who were senior gave me some of their time and share their lived experiences, and I got to also share sort of my hopes, my fears, and so on. And I think it's what makes our industry, advertising and media exciting is the people. And I know it's cliche to say so, but that's what gives me energy. It's where I get my energy, and it's where I want to place my energy and my time also.
Yeah, lovely. Richard, the time has zipped by, so to finish on time, this is probably going to be the last question. But thank you for being part of Mentoring Gen Z, which is still growing like Billy O, both in terms of mentors and mentees. It's the School of Marketing, Richie and the School of Marketing's gift to help people into and thrive within the marketing industry. And on that note, as a final question, you've reflected on so many areas, but if you're thinking about the advice that you would give to young people trying to make it in the world today, particularly in the marketing zone, what would be your core piece of advice for those folks?
Yeah, wow.
Not a small question, but
yeah, not a small question. Probably again a reflection I had when I was in Fontainebleau with INSEAD, which is the idea of think big, start small, but start now, because actually the hardest bit is that first step.
Yeah, nice. So, Rich, it's been brilliant having you on. We do like to honour the 8:45 finish, so we're just going to do a little bit of a wrap up of some of the key takeaways that we've had. I'm going to start actually just by saying there's a nice comment from Lindsay Homer, who's a regular on the show, brand manager for Cadbury's Cream Egg. Thank you for this session. Great start to Friday. Your honesty to share that doing this session is moving you outside of your comfort zone is so refreshing. And I would say absolutely that. It's been tremendously rich. So what did we get from Bonnie? We got the emphasis upon learning, but actually not just for the sake of saying it. Going back to INSEAD and really digging deep and learning about yourself. You talked about the importance of simple pleasures. Don't believe the hate or the hype. I think that was good. And really, that's my sense of you, Richard. Very centered, very reflective, very people-oriented, very optimistic. And I love that thought. Would people recognize me? Am I showing up as people would expect of me? The linkage between being good and being happy, being good and doing good. There's just a huge centeredness about you, which I really, really loved. And the letters to self and the fact that you held yourself accountable to that on the back of INSEAD brilliantly. Cycling allows you to think deeply, but also to unhook. But I'm going to hold on to the snakes and ladders. I think that's such a great metaphor for everybody's career, and it links to the fact that we can all be successful, brilliant, fulfilled, happy, but not every day or every week or every month. And it's actually those undulations that make for an interesting story and give us rich learning. So for your centeredness and your optimism and your reflectiveness, I thank you, Richard, for coming on the show. Richie.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to take away and hold on to is the actual thought that you're such a family-centered man, where you really talk about the need for having sort of life at home, life in the workplace, and actually you judge yourself across both those dimensions, and that's very rare, by the way. Usually people fall into everyone talks about work life, but actually most people judge themselves more in one versus the other. And I think you're really somebody, the way that you said, I want to make sure that, what would my parents think of this, my wife think of this, and my friends think of this, and would they recognize me in an individual in every decision that I make? For me, was just so special. And the fact that, you use this opportunity, probably the most stressful point in your career, or anybody, if you're thinking about a world that we live in, yours is probably, in that moment quite stressful. And yet actually what gave you joy was the fact that you were taking time out to spend time with your kids, to brush them up on their French. And that gave you real joy inside. And I just thought that was really remarkable. And especially the fact that you're leading that massive team on the other side of your life. And yet actually, you're really taking time to nurture your family and actually, really feel like what they think, your friends think, your parents think are all really important assets, and what you bring to your professional life as well. And that's really special. So thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richie. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Over to you, Mark.
Well, I was going to say it's been a real treat. And actually, I forgot to say the fact that you've got your 5-year-old zinging on his French is a wonderful, small but important silver lining of the pandemic. So it's been a pleasure having you on, Richard. We're here again next week. coming back again. Richie, remind me, we've got who have we got next week?
I will check and get back to you.
Yeah. So, but we'll be here next week with another great guest with lots more rich insights. So, in lieu of that,